What's up YouTube? I got another tutorial for you guys. I think you guys are gonna really like this one. My client right here, he wanted to do something new, so I figured we'd go something super crazy, and I went with a burst fade. This is his first burst fade. I think his first fade in general, but you'll see at the end of the video how it turned out. Right now I'm just brushing out his hair, sectioning it, getting the top away from the sides, getting ready to do that burst fade. When you're doing a burst fade, it's kind of like a mohawk pretty much, so you want to separate the back and the top away from the sides as much as possible, depending on how wide you want your burst fade to happen. I usually put it pretty wide in the back and then towards the top, just where his parietal ridge is, and get that all combed out, sectioned off, and get ready to do my fade steps. And just to have even more control of the hair, I'm putting in my croc clips, really holding the top away from the sides, just so that I don't cut any hair that I don't want to when I'm blending and doing my fade steps on the sides. I kind of want to keep length on the top and the back because this is a mohawk, so you want a bit of length on the top. I'm going to add a bunch of texture up top, keep the length, and then you'll see you know how the look actually looks with the mohawk. I think it turned out pretty good on him. I think he was excited about it. He got that Patrick Mahomes, you know what I mean. But so we're just sectioning out, and I take my time sectioning, making sure that everything looks good and neat, so that my fade can be the best that it can be. And I'm going to be doing this tutorial in real time so you guys can follow along. Sometimes when it's sped up, I feel like you guys have to pause it, or maybe it goes too fast and you can't really pay attention to what's going on. So I'm going at normal speed so you guys can clearly see all my steps that I do to get this fade done. Alright, now that we got everything clean and ready to go, I'm just going to clear out the bulk. So I'm using clipper over comb. I don't really grab a guard because I need to take off a bunch of bulk all at one time. And the best way to do that is to use clipper over comb. It's just going to be the fastest way to get rid of all that bulk. And you're not going to really mess up. As long as you don't dig too deep into the parietal ridge up top, you should be fine, because everything else underneath that is going to be lower. It's going to be faded in. So I'm just clearing out all the bulk as fast as possible to get ready for my fade steps. And if you don't know really the basics of barbering, go check out my Barber basic terms video so you can understand what I'm explaining as I do this haircut. But I'm just clearing out the bulk really fast so I can see what I'm doing. I don't want to do my fade steps and not be able to see, because then my guidelines aren't going to be clean, and it's going to make it harder for me to blend out all those guidelines. And you don't want guidelines to be showing at the end of the cut, because then you'll be able to see them and then it's going to look unblended. So you want to make sure that your guidelines, all your steps, are super clean, super blended. So to be able to do that, you need to see what you're doing. So I'm just clearing out all the bulk so that I can achieve the fade that I want. And this step doesn't have to be super perfect anyway. We're just clearing out the bulk. It's kind of like a rough draft. At the end, towards the end of the fade, we're gonna be refining it anyway. So this doesn't have to be your end all be all. It's gonna change. You just want to set yourself up so you can do the blend and then come back and clean it all later. This doesn't have to be perfect. And I really do hope this helps you guys. If you're a client and you've never had a burst fade before, hopefully this can show you that this haircut can actually look really cool and really good if it's done right. And for my barbers out there that have never attempted this cut, if you're new, or if you don't have any clients that get this type of style, hopefully this will help guide you on being able to achieve this. And then you know, you tackle your first burst fade, your client loves it, and then you can add it to your bag of haircuts. So hopefully you can follow along. It's pretty easy. I'm doing this new kind of point of view so you guys can be in my kind of footsteps. You can see clearly what I'm doing and kind of follow along that way. So let me know if you guys like this kind of angle. It's a bit different than my normal ones. I usually have the camera set up on the side, but I have a mount that I can use sometimes. So if you guys like this point of view, go ahead and hit that like button. Let me know if you guys like this view or not. And going back into my steps, I am using my 2-guard open. I just wanted to clear out a bit more bulk so that it's easier to put in my initial bald guideline. The trimmer sometimes has trouble putting in the guideline if the hair is a bit too long, so to help with that, I just went lower with my number 2 guard. And now that all the bulk is gone, it's time to do our fade steps. So I'm starting with my trimmer, creating my bald line, and it's going to be a little bit different than a normal bald line. This one's going to be curved. That's why they call it a burst fade. It kind of looks like the rays of light bursting from the sun, so that's why they call it a burst fade. And so you're using a lot of corners. You're just putting that in circular over the ear, and then we're going to go ahead and bald that out with the trimmer. You guys know, if you've seen my other tutorials, I love using the trimmer because it gets it as close to skin as possible. If you're using just the clipper, especially with these burst fades, sometimes it's hard to get in your bald line since your clipper is so bulky. So especially on these burst fades, I like using my trimmer and just getting everything as bald as possible. And I'll come back in with my shavers and just add another level of gradients to that. But if you're new, if you're a beginner barber, you can use your clipper closed and it'll do the same thing as this trimmer. But I have all my stuff set. I have it 0 gaps, so I can easily take out that line later. I'm not too worried about it. But for the beginners, I definitely recommend using your clipper because your clippers probably aren't set right. So it's going to be hard to take out if you use a trimmer. So stay away from that. Use your clippers. It'll be easier for you. But the same kind of thing applies. You're just going to go in that rainbow shape, setting it in. I don't go too high because I like to spread out my guideline, so I keep this first bald line pretty low, and then I spread out my guideline so I can get a lot of gradients, a lot of blend in this fade. And guys, notice how I'm brushing after every pass with my trimmer. I want to clear out all the debris. It's kind of hard to work if you don't have a clean canvas, so keep that brush in your hand, keep a comb in your hand, brush out all that debris after you cut the hair so you can have clean canvas and see what you're doing, balding everything out. And after I'm done using my trimmer, I'll come back in with my shaver just to get it more bald than the trimmer. And notice I'm not going all the way up to the line because then that line is going to be impossible to blend out. So you kind of want to keep some stubble under that guideline, at the top of that guideline, using your shaver. If you do go up to the line, go with the grain with your shaver because it's going to blend out the hair. If you go against the grain, it's going to create a really harsh, really bald line that's going to be almost impossible to get out when you start doing the rest of the fade. And I love this single foil shaver. It just makes it way easier to get into these small spaces versus the double foil. They're kind of big, so it's hard to get in these smaller places. So a single foil is just magic for me right there. And if you're happy with that step, then it's time to set in your first guideline. I'm using my clipper open, and again, I'm going in that rainbow shape. I'm going about a finger's length. Usually I say about an inch, but sometimes people don't know what measurements actually look like. So the width of your index finger is typically what your guideline is going to look like. So I'm going about a finger's width, going in that rainbow shape, and I'm really using the corners of this blade because if you try to use the full blade flat, it's not going to be round. You're going to end up making it pretty square. So just go in that rainbow shape and setting in the guideline. Make sure that the guideline is super even all the way around, the same width all the way around that rainbow shape. And pass over that guideline multiple times with your clipper to ensure that all the hair in that guideline is all one length. If you're going with the clipper, sometimes it's not going to get all the hair, and so the hair is not going to be even, so it's going to be a little bit harder to blend out. So go over a couple times, make sure that all the hair in that area is all even, and then you can start your fade steps. So you guys know my fade steps. I start open with what I set in my guideline, and I close it little by little as I go down. Now in this shape, it's gonna be a little bit weird if you've never done this before. You kind of have to go in that rainbow shape. So I like to take small sections in this guideline and just go down until it's blended out, and then I move to another section. I blend that out, and then I move to the rest of the section, then blend that out. I take my time on these steps because it is a little bit more difficult than doing a regular fade, since it is in that arc shape. You use a lot of corners, and just the way that you're fading against the grain is just a little bit different. So take your time and make sure that that guideline comes out really gradient. It's all blended, there's no lines, and then you can move on to your next steps. And if you guys didn't know what tools I'm using my Babyliss Low Pro FX, the Nicole Renee edition, and then I'm using, for my trimmers, I use the Babyliss Skeleton FX, the Chameleons, and then the FX3s. I actually started this clipper has been growing on me recently. I didn't like it at first when I first got it. I don't know if it was because the blade wasn't broken in, or if I hadn't used it enough times so that blade could work properly, but I enjoy using them now. It blends super buttery, and it's just easy to cut hair with it. And the ergonomics with that thumb grip on it is super comfortable in the hand. I don't really have to worry about if I'm, when I'm moving it around and trying to hold it in a right position. It's just super easy to use. It's not really heavy, but you can feel the quality because it is a metal casing, so it has that kind of pack to it, and it's decently quiet for how high the RPMs go. I don't know off the top of my head how fast the motor moves, but it does fade really well. It has a little bit of trouble going through a lot of bulk, so these aren't going to be like your lawnmowers where you're going to use to clear out all kinds of bulk. I'd recommend using like a Wall Senior for that, just because those are like powerhouses. They have a super strong motor that can just go through that hair. But when it comes to blending and fading out, this clipper is actually really amazing. And don't get me wrong, I definitely want to try out more clippers when that time comes. If I have some money that I can spend on more clippers, I will have more clippers, because I don't know about that type of stuff. If you're the same way, I like to have all kinds of different tools because they're fun to use. It switches up your kind of cutting style, and it just makes it more fun. It keeps you from getting bored and doing the same thing over and over again. So having new stuff is just pretty cool. I've only used a handful of clippers, so I don't know a whole lot about all kinds of clippers, but the stuff that I use, I really do like them. I do want to try out the JRLs because I've heard pretty good things about it. Maybe one day I'll get my hands on some, but for now, my tools are doing their job and I'm working with what I got. And if you're happy with how that blend turned out, it's time to move on to your next step, setting in your second guideline. I'm using my half guard, lever open as always, and I'm going up another finger's width. Really trying to follow that shape of my two other guidelines. I'm trying to stay away from the back as much as possible because I want to keep length and width in that area. I want to keep bulk back there so that the mohawk can be bouncy. It has a bunch of shape, and I can add texture and keep it dark back there. And then I'm going towards that C cup. It's fine to go towards the C cup. It's still going to be dark with that half guard length, and then it's going to be easier because the hair is shorter in that area. But the same thing as my other guideline, I'm starting open, and as I go down, I'm closing the lever little by little until that line starts to disappear. Really using my corners. The corners are what's going to blend this area out. If you try to use the full blade, you might risk putting in a guideline that you don't necessarily want, and then you're going to have to push the fade up even higher, and then you're potentially going to mess up the shape of this mohawk, of this burst fade. So try to keep all your blend in that area. You don't want to be going past that guideline that you set in with the half guard. And you guys can already tell this blend is starting to look super good already just with these two steps. The later steps is basically just to continue fading that out and making sure that it's not a super heavy bulk line above the fade. So you guys are seeing it come together. I'm going to let you guys watch this side, because what you do to one side, you do the exact same to the other. And really quick, some of the best advice I can give you when putting in these guidelines is to kind of flick out so you can make the top of that guideline a little bit softer. So when you come in and put in your other guidelines or try to blend that out, it's not as harsh. You're going to have an easier time blending that out, because if you're flicking out, that means you're leaving the head and you're cutting that hair a bit longer than the rest of your guideline. So flicking out is going to just make it easier. It's going to basically soften the top of that guideline, so when you come in and blend that out, it's just going to be way easier for you. And after that step is good and blended, you guys know I don't like to move on to my next steps until I'm happy with the blend and it's looking gradient and looking as good as possible. I don't like to move on until I'm completely satisfied with that. So I was happy with the blend, so now I'm taking my 1.5 guard, and again I'm going a finger's length. This is going to be your last guideline, by the way, until we start blending out that bulk near the parietal ridge. So I'm really flicking out at this step so that it's blending into that already, and then when I come back, it's just going to be easier to blend that out. But I'm taking my 1.5 guard, I'm going that finger's width, and just setting that guideline in that rainbow shape, following the exact shape that we've been doing with these guidelines, and then I'm blending that out, closing the lever little by little as I go down. And with my clippers, it does have notches in it. It's not a free floating lever, so it's really easy to follow these steps. When you're closing it little by little, you're just hitting every single notch, especially under the 2 guard. I like to go every single notch, and then once I get past my 2 guard and up, I just go open to close, because the clipper can blend without having to use all those extra steps. It's easy to blend from open to close with those higher guards. It's not much of a difference in hair lengths at that point. And the same thing on this side, I'm going up that finger's width, flicking out, setting in my guideline, making sure that all the hair is even in the area. And for some reason, this side is a bit easier to blend out. It's typical with people. Some people have a certain side of their head that's way easier to blend out. That's this side for me, and you guys can kind of tell the blend is looking a bit more smooth than the other side. It's just is what it is. I guess it's the way that the hair grows on certain sides. It's not gonna be equal on both sides of the head. So this side, the hair was just laying down better in my opinion, and it's just helping the blend look better on this side. But go ahead and take a look at that blend. It's looking super blurry already, and that's before we're even tackling that bulk above it. This will be fine to leave it like this, but I don't like having a super harsh and bulky area above the blend. So we're gonna finish that shape. We're gonna define it a bit more and take out that bulk. So here I'm using clipper over comb. It's gonna go directly from that 1.5 guard up into the bulk seamlessly. When you put the clipper or the comb on the head, it's about a 1.5 length, so it's gonna blend straight from your 1.5 guard up into that bulk. And so you see me going across the comb, and you see me going up. When I'm doing that, when I'm going across it, I'm taking off bulk, but then when I'm going vertical up the comb, that's when I'm blending. So if you ever want to blend, you're going to go up vertical against the comb, and if you just want to take off bulk, you're going horizontal. And this is just the best and fastest way to get that bulk cut down and blended, but you kind of have to know what you're doing. So practice a couple times, make sure you get it right, and it's going to be super easy for you. If you don't know what you're doing and you try to do this, it might backfire, because you could take off more hair than you want to, and then you're changing the shape of the hairstyle. So I usually flare my comb outwards so I can keep the shape, but then I can get that blended from my fade up into that bulk area. Especially with hairstyles like this, I kind of want it flared out anyway, so that the top hair has something to lay on. If you go straight up to the parietal ridge, for example, if you go all the way bald, then it's just going to be bald and then a bunch of bulky hair that doesn't have any hair to lay on, so the shape is just going to look really weird. But you see, as I'm doing this, I'm taking my time. Sometimes going slower is faster. If you try to go too fast and then you end up messing up the shape, you're going to have to go back in and fix it, and you're going to take longer on this than you want to. So go slow. It's going to be faster, I promise you, because then you can really be precise and really get that blend and that bulk cut down to the shape that you want it. And even after using clipper over comb, I like to come back and do texturizing shear over comb. It's gonna soften up that area and really help that blend be seamless. And at the same time, so when you're using your texturizing shears, you're adding texture to the hair, so that when you come back in and use your products that you like using, it's gonna really make that texture pop. Your hair is going to be light and bouncy, and it's going to be way more manageable that way. If it's too thick and you try to use your products or try to style it afterwards, you're going to have a difficult time, because the hair just wants to lay down if it's too bulky, if it's too thick and too dense. So I love using texturizing shear over comb, adding that texture and really making it light and bouncy, because it's going to thin out the hair a bit, and it's not going to be as thick, it's not going to be as bulky. And so also, when I'm using my texturizing shear over comb, it's going to take out every other hair, getting out those dark spots and the unevenness in the blend without sacrificing the darkness. You're going to keep that darkness up in that parietal ridge area. That's what you want, so you can really contrast that blend. And so really using this step is just to blend out between the fade and your bulk up top. And you don't have to worry about taking off too much length, because that's not really what the texturizing shear is going to do. If you're using regular shears, you would be taking off a bunch of bulk and a bunch of length, but with texturizing shears, you're just blending. That's what it's there for, is to blend out without taking out too much hair. And now that you're done with all your steps on the side, it's time to edge up around the fade. It's really going to make that fade pop, and you can really see what that fade is actually looking like. Whenever you put in these edge ups, it just accentuates that fade. So you can really see if you need to go back and do some detail work, and you can really see how the blend is looking at that point. So I'm taking my trimmers and I'm keeping it as natural as possible on these edge ups. really letting the trimmer do the work. I'm not pushing in. I'm not applying a lot of pressure because they are zero gap. They're really sharp. They're gonna get you a nice line just by pressing it against the skin, but you don't want to apply too much pressure. Have a light hand. You don't want to be cutting your clients. You don't want to irritate their skin, because that will actually last a couple days. So if they're walking around with your haircut and they have lines and red marks all over their skin, people are going to notice, and then they're going to stay away from you. They don't want to get a cut from you. So definitely don't let your client have to go through that. Just be super light with this, and you're kind of etching in that edge up using your corners, kind of like a pencil. You're kind of drawing in the edge up, but you do want it really sharp. It's really gonna help that haircut, help the hairstyle pop. A bunch of haircuts just look incomplete if you don't have it really sharp. That's why I don't really like, for example, when hairstylists, they'll go in and they'll put an edge up, but it's not really super sharp, so the haircuts just don't look complete, in my opinion. They really look good when they have a really gradient blend, and they have that super sharp edge up. And trust me, with both of these, you're really gonna set yourself apart from the rest of the barbers. People are gonna notice, and if the haircut is looking good, they're gonna ask your client where they got their cut from, and of course they're gonna say you, and then that's just advertisement for you. This is your walking advertisement. You want to make sure that it looks really good, and so everything that you can do to give them the best service and give them the best haircut possible, making it look really sharp and making it look really, really good, that's just going to set yourself apart. And I've kind of noticed I haven't really explained where you put in your edge up. It kind of depends on the person. But if you want to find out where to put the edge up, kind of comb away the hair around the lineup, and you'll just see the overhang. You want to knock off the overhang. You don't want to dig into the actual edge up where the hair is. You just want to hit that overhang, and it's going to keep it dark, and it's going to make it extra sharp. Now it's time to cut the top and the back. I'm saturating my client's hair with water. What that is going to do is basically bring the hair to its longest length, and then the water is going to make it more manageable. It's going to be easier to comb, easier to section, easier to hold the hair. You're just making it as easy as possible for you to be able to control this hair, because cutting the hair up top isn't easy. You want to have precision, you want to be accurate, and you want to make it as easy of a process as possible for yourself, so that you can make sure that the hair is cut all even up top. It's not going to look choppy, and your client can have an easier time styling it the way that they want to. But I'm combing the hair backwards, and I'm setting a section in the middle, kind of like a mohawk section, and then I'm brushing the sides down and out of the way so I can go ahead and cut my guideline. The same thing on the sides when you're doing the fade, where I'm using guidelines. I want to set a guideline for myself up top so that I can make sure when I'm cutting it that I can have all the hair as even as possible. And so I'm pulling the hair up using tension with my fingers, and I'm pushing the comb so that the hair is at its longest length, and I'm just going to snip off about an inch and half an inch to an inch. Like I said in the beginning, I wanted to keep a bit of length up top so we can get a lot of texture and really style this mohawk really crazy looking. So I'm taking that section, I'm going towards the front from the back, following that guideline, and you guys can see when I pull up the hair, I grab my guideline where you can see that the hair that I already cut, and you'll see the longer length of hair that I need to cut, and I'm traveling from the back to the front, so I can keep a little bit more length in the front where his bangs are. In the back, I'm kind of matching it to the back so that it flows naturally, and then going towards the front, I'm bringing the hair up, I'm over directing it backwards so I can keep some length towards the front. And I didn't really get any good angles when recording me cutting the top, all even with the horizontal sections, but I got a little bit of them. Basically, you're gonna split the hair to one side where you cut your guideline, and then you're gonna pull up horizontal sections. You'll be able to see the hair from the middle and the hair that you need to cut. So here, if you guys can see, I'm bringing my guideline from the middle, I'm pulling it up, and then you see the long length of hair that hasn't been cut yet, and you're just gonna snip that off, matching your guideline. And if it makes it easier for you, pull up the hair a couple times. If you don't get your guideline right away, or if you don't get the tension that you want, that's okay. Brush it up a couple times until you're satisfied with the tension and the grip that you have in your fingers, and then go ahead and snip the hair off. And after I'm done cutting all the top, I'm sectioning the hair into a triangle section and pulling the hair to the side. With these Mohawk burst fades, I don't like a lot of overhang over the fade, so I'm pulling the hair from the top to my guideline on the side where the parietal ridge where I did my fade. I'm pulling it to that bulk, and I'm snipping anything off that hangs over that fade, so that when you go and style it, there's not going to be overhang, and everything's just going to go, it's going to blend easily from the sides up into that top. Everything's going to be connected. It's not going to be disconnected to where you have long length and it's hanging over and it doesn't look right, not where it's supposed to be. So you're pulling the hair over, directing it to the side of the parietal ridge and matching it up with that hair where you left it bulky above the blend. And you'll see when I'm pulling this hair to the side, I'm not blunt cutting it because I want it to blend easier. I don't want a harsh kind of bulk of hair going over the side. So I'm using point cutting. It's going to add texture, but it's also going to make it a bit easier to blend into the bulk on the parietal ridge. And now to finish this off and add a whole bunch of texture, I take my texturizing shears again, and I'm just pulling up all the hair on the back and the top where the mohawk is, and I'm going in and just setting in that texture. I'm pulling the hair up, and then I'm basically clipping off the ends of the hair. It's gonna break up the hair. It's basically adding uneven lengths, and that's how you get texture, because if you have uneven lengths, the hair is gonna bounce off of each other, it's gonna lay on top of each other, and you're gonna be able to get a really messy look that way. And you don't have to be super precise with this step, as long as you don't cut at the root, as long as you're pulling the hair to the length that you cut it when you were cutting the top with your regular shears, you shouldn't have any problems. You're going to add texture, you're not really taking off length of the hair. And now that we added all that texture, it's time to finalize this look. So I'm setting myself up for the style. I'm making sure that the hair is dry so that when I put my product in, the hair can accept the product, and then it can be really bouncy. You can mess it up in your hands and really get that texture popping. And I'm going ahead and I'm dusting off my client, getting all the extra hairs that we cut off, so that when he leaves, he's not going to have hair. He's not going to be itchy when he leaves my shop, and he'll be nice and clean. And at the end of every single haircut, make sure you clean off your client's neck. You don't want them leaving with hair on their neck. It's going to be unprofessional. They're going to feel the hair on their neck, and it's going to be uncomfortable. You want to make sure that you're really professional, you're cleaning off, and you don't forget this step. And I'm even going in with my shavers, getting it razor bald so that it can last them a bit longer. They don't have to come back as frequent. Their hair is not going to bother them on their neck for as long. It's going to last a little bit longer. So I'm taking my shavers and I'm just going everything that I cut down with my trimmer. And to finish everything off, I'm using my alcohol so that he can leave clean. He's not going to have razor bumps. His skin is going to be nice and sanitized and ready for him to go. And this is the final look. I was super happy with the way it turned out. I know he was super happy with this new style. He's never tried before. He was really excited and he really loved the look. The texture is super good. We got a lot of texture with that product, and the way that we cut the top, the blend is looking super blurry. The styling and the shape is on point. I left a lot of length so that he can just wake up and get it really messy using that product and really get a lot of texture out of this. But I hope you guys enjoyed the transformation. Let me know how you feel about this haircut. Hit that subscribe button if you're new here to stay up to date with all the drops. But it's your boy Pico.Blurred. I'll catch you guys on the next video.
Oh my god, is that Pico.Blurred?